And I went undercover, and as they boasted about what they did, I wrote the cover story, which was published on the morning of Eid in Pakistan. My father had gone to say his prayers, and about 15 minutes later, he came back home and said to me, "You can't leave the house today." He said to me that day, "I'm going to find a group of people, even though it's a holiday, and I know they want to teach you a lesson. We're going to go out and whitewash the walls." And then he looked at me and said, "If you speak the truth, I will stand with you, and so will the world." And I took that with me at that age, and I have carried that. The Taliban have destroyed over 200 government schools in Swat, and a few days ago they declared that no girls were going to be allowed to go to school here.
400 girls studied here. Most of them are too scared to talk about the Taliban. But two 9-year-olds want to tell me what happened.
मैं तो इतनी खफा हूँ, मैं तो यहाँ पर कह रही कि मैं यहाँ पर ना आ जाऊँ।
परेशानी होती है ज़रा कि इतना बड़ा
हमारा दिल है
इस तरह तबाह किया।
जब तो स्कूल क्यों पसंद है?
इसलिए कि लोग स्कूल जाके मशगूल भी होते हैं, तालीम रोशनी मुझे चाहिए।
तो अगर तालिबान की हुकूमत आ गई तो लड़कियों के साथ क्या होगा?
घर में बैठी रहेगी।
मेरे अब्बू ने तो मेरे लिए वो बुर्का लिया है, तो जब मैं मदरसा जाती हूँ जुम्मत में तो मैं वो पहनती हूँ।
तुम्हें बुर्का पसंद है?
नहीं, उसमें लोग गिरते भी हैं और
Suddenly, a reminder that SWAT is on the front line.
ये क्या था?
ये दवा कोई आवाज़ था, तो ये तोप की आवाज़ है।
तोप की आवाज़ है? We can hear some firing. तोप की आवाज़ है? किसकी आवाज़ हो रही है?
Our local contact checks what's going on.
हाँ। अच्छा। हाँ। The girls wanted to give me a tour of their destroyed school, but because the Taliban have surrounded the area, we have to leave immediately.
We're told the Taliban are getting ready to attack an army convoy. One of the girls says we can shelter at her home until the fighting stops.
Okay, next please. Ruxana? Oh, beta, it comes here. वो कितनी को ऊपर है आपकी?
25।
क्या हुआ था आपको?
तेजाब डाला।
किसने तेजाब डाला?
हाँ, तेजाब डाला। नंद ने पेट्रोल डाल दिया।
आपके शौहर ने आप पे तेजाब फेंका?
नंद ने पेट्रोल डाला था। फिर मेरी सास ने तेल लगाई, माचिस के साथ आग लगा दी।
तो तुम कहाँ रहती हो?
मुझे वो ले गए हैं अपने घर।
तुम अभी उसी घर में रहती हो?
हाँ। फिर मेरे बच्चे बीमार बहुत बीमार हो गए। मैं फिर खर्चा उनको नहीं बर्दाश्त कर सकती थी। मेरे बाप गरीब है, इसलिए मैंने सुलह कर लिया।
Okay. It makes me very angry. And most of them are as young as 12, 13, 14, and they're women, man. I'm surrounded by women at home, and it bothers me a lot.
When I was growing up in Pakistan, my mother always thought that I was an angry young woman. And I would be driving to school in the morning or in the afternoon, and I would see things around me, and I'd question them. And I'd often get into fights when I'd see the injustices that were taking place. And so she told me at a very young age that you should channel this anger and start writing. So at the age of 14, I started writing for Pakistan's largest English language newspaper. And by the time I was 17 years old, I was going undercover to do investigative journalism. I remember one particular story at the age of 17. There were a group of young men, 16, 17-year-olds, children of feudal lords, who had access to ammunition. And they would drive around the cities, kidnapping other boys of similar age, shaving their heads, kidnapping them for a few hours for torture, just because they had power. And I went undercover, and as they boasted about what they did, I wrote the cover story, which was published on the morning of Eid in Pakistan. And I remember that morning really well because my father had gone to say his prayers, and about 15 minutes later, he came back home and said to me, "You can't leave the house today." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, they have spray painted your name with profanities across several neighborhoods." Now imagine being 17 years old, coming from a fairly conservative household where you have your name and your family's name spray painted across several neighborhoods. And he said to me that day, "I'm going to find a group of people, even though it's a holiday, and I know they want to teach you a lesson. We're going to go out and whitewash the walls." And then he looked at me and said, because I was very afraid at that time that I would have to give up the work that I do, because I was the eldest of 5 girls, came from a fairly traditional family, and you don't shake the status quo at that age. And he said to me, "If you speak the truth, I will stand with you, and so will the world." And I took that with me at that age, and I have carried that. So he emboldened me at that age to speak out, something that is not encouraged in the country that I come from. A few years later, it was time for me to go to college. My father said, "Well, I really want you to study in Pakistan. I don't want you to go to college in the US." And I was determined to go. So I secretly applied, and I got in, and he said, "Well, there's no way you're going now. You're too young to go." And so I went on a hunger strike. And for 36 hours, I refused to eat or drink anything. And I said, "Well, until you send me to college, I am not going to eat." And so he finally gave in, and I found myself in the United States getting an education that really did shape the worldview and as I see the world today. And it was 9/11, and like a good Pakistani South Asian girl, I was studying economics to please my parents, and political science, and getting that degree. And 9/11 happened, and I really felt that I was in a unique position because I came from 2 worlds. And as I watched on television the 24-hour news cycle about Afghanistan and Pakistan and what was happening there, I thought about the stories that people were not talking about, the stories that were being overlooked. And that's when I decided that I wanted to make films. So armed with a degree that had nothing to do with film, I wrote up a proposal and sent it out to 80 production houses in the United States. I said, "Well, I'd like to make a documentary film about Afghan refugee children who are on the streets of Pakistan. Their stories, how has the war impacted the next generation?" And I got a lot of polite no's. Some people didn't even bother writing back. But I've always believed that a door has not opened for you because you have not knocked hard enough. And that opportunity comes when you kick open doors. And so I started writing to any and everyone. I basically started stalking people on the internet. And I wrote one day to the president of New York Times. And I said, "This is my proposal. Find attached. I would love for you to write back to me." And 15 minutes later, he wrote back and said, "Can you come to New York?" So I bought my first suit, and I went off to New York, and I found myself in this big room where I was presenting to the editorial board of the New York Times. Needless to say, they gave me the funding for my first film, and they trained me, and off I went. And Terrorist Children, which follows the lives of 7 children on the streets of Pakistan, won a number of very big accolades. And that's how my career started as a filmmaker. And over the years, I've chosen to focus on the communities the marginalized men, women, and children across the world who I feel whose voices should be amplified in some way. In 2008, I was doing a particularly difficult film. I was in Syria and Jordan looking at Iraqi refugees. And it was late at night, and I was going undercover to a brothel where 14-year-old Iraqi girls were being sold to rich Arab men from GCC countries. And I saw this 16-year-old girl there, and she had lost her entire family, and she'd been sold into prostitution. And at that moment, as a filmmaker, everything cried out in me that you can't leave her there. You just can't leave her there. And so we found a way to get her to the UN and lobbied the Canadian government to get her asylum. I think as a filmmaker, when you're working in these communities, you often are confronted with the reality. Do you just document these people? Do you take a step back? Do you find a way to help them? And throughout my career, people have always asked me, what will I get if I'm in this film? And I've always told people that I can't personally help you, perhaps, but when you're able to start these difficult conversations, the truth that you bring are able to start these difficult conversations, then you'll find that change will happen. In 2009, I went undercover in the first film that you've seen, working with children who had been recruited by the Taliban to become child suicide bombers. In Pakistan's Taliban generation, most people at that time were focusing on these human bombs that were coming. But who were these children? What was their reality? And shouldn't we understand why people make certain choices? So as I spent time with the children, documenting them, going undercover, talking to so many of them, I realized that, unfortunately, these children had no choices, that they were doing what they were doing because they had been separated from their families, because they had been brainwashed continuously, because no alternative discourse was available to them, and because if you are beaten, fed nothing, and are far away from your family, and told that the next and the afterlife is going to be so much better than the life that you're currently in, who wouldn't want to cross over to the other side? That film, as it went forward and won acclaim, also created a backlash for me. You don't start difficult conversations in Pakistan. You hide the problems under the carpet. And I realized that more so when Saving Face came out and it won the Academy Award. We were blackmailed, we were hounded. My team and I, as much as the accolades came forward, there were so many who said, you show the other side of Pakistan, the side of Pakistan you shouldn't be showing. But I believe it is so important and so critical to have these conversations because change does not happen overnight. And it's going to be a long and hard journey for those of us who live in Pakistan to see that change and for that change to happen. And people often ask me, why do you continue to live there? In the last 2 years, I have been filming and following hundreds of young men and women across the country, a silent revolution, people who are risking their lives for a better tomorrow, making sure that what's happened to them doesn't happen to the next generation. So, a young woman who's building a school for 1,200 children in a community where girls never went to school. Another woman who's rescuing hundreds of children from bonded labor. A man who was sexually abused on the streets and now rescues other young men from sexual abuse on the streets. These are the people who are not winning accolades. These are the women and men who don't have a light shining on them, but they continue to choose to stay to make sure that their communities see a better tomorrow. And I stay because when I have this baby, I want to look into her eyes and say, if you speak the truth, I will stand with you, and so will the world. Thank you.